Everybody's doing well. We're gonna, I think, spend maybe 30, 45 minutes here to have a discussion around national security, most importantly around technology and the convergence of that technology and what it means for national security. I asked Mark to join me up here because we're both kind of in the same circles here at bringing the communities together. And I know it was said on previous discussions around bringing all of those entities together. And I was thinking, how cool is it that we're at the center point of a lot of these
All
things?
of that, yeah, there's a lot of overlap.
So before we do that, though, I want to do some brief introductions on some of our backgrounds and what we're working on now, and hopefully, we can open it up for questions at the end. So, Mark, why don't you, tell us about what you're working on?
Okay. One, I'm Mark Cervantes. I'm the CEO of QBranch, which is a global business accelerator. I'm a first-generation American, second-generation veteran, and a third-generation entrepreneur. That's kind of the 1, 2, 3 of me. For the last 2.5 years, I retired from the military and came out here to one of the best cities in Texas. I'm fond of the entire state, but we're seeing the opportunity growing here at an alarming rate is happening here because of the culture found in Austin. And I think that plays into a lot of these verticals that we're going to be talking about. But what we've been doing is bringing in international scale-up companies, really trying to connect them into the fabric of Texas, if not finding them the right spot in the United States in order to be successful.
Great. And a little bit about my background. And first, I just want to thank UT and the World Affairs Organization for having us out here. This is a great honor to be up here. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I know Mortada and some of the rest are in the audience, so thank you very much for this. I've come out here the last couple of years to have a number of different talks, mainly around technology and stuff. And my background is 30 years in the tech world. I spent 21 years at Dell, and that's what brought me to Austin originally. I also, at Dell, spent 10 years living in Shanghai, China, and spent a lot of time with their technology and integrating our technology into their systems. So there's some interesting things that we can talk about there. The last 10 years I've spent really in the startup scene and the startup world in a number of different roles. I've founded a company, I've operated a couple of automation tech companies, and then I work for an organization called Stony Lonesome Group, which is a venture-backed firm that backs dual-use and defense technologies. So I help them find companies and find money to investment into those areas. And then the last thing, I moved out of Austin about 3 years ago, and I moved to Miami, and I work for an organization called Emerge Americas. So Emerge Americas, think South by Southwest, but in South Florida. I have the opportunity to run the national security vertical for them. So my job is to pull together all the pillars of the community. We've got a lot of interaction with universities, all of the R1 Florida universities we have partnerships with. We also have tech firms and tech organizations. We also have government entities, both state, local, and federal. And then we also have the bigger companies that are a part of this too. So my job is to put programming together that can actually bring all of those entities together. And I thought it was interesting, the discussion earlier about the silos that we're in. So maybe we can touch a little bit on those silos.
Tell them when it is, because I think that's a plug, right? It's coming up, everyone. So
it is. So it's busy. It's the end of the month. So the 23rd, 24th of Miami, we bring together about 25,000 people in Miami Beach. And it's great. We actually have a lot of great people coming, a lot of government, a lot of universities, a lot of startups. We do accelerator programs. We do a lot of cool things that are there. We also leverage the assets in the state of Florida. So we have a lot of ports, and we have a lot of bases, and we have a lot of COCOMs, and we have a lot of things that we can have toys fly and float and go under the water and do a whole bunch of stuff. So I would encourage you to come out and come see what we're all about. I do think there's a strong connection between Florida and Texas, and both in the government side and the tech side and the people side. So we can chat a little bit about that. But before we get into some of this, I want to know who's in the audience here. It would be helpful to just understand what type of people here. So do we have government, U.S. government, and foreign government in the room? Great. And then what about university, whether you're teaching or part of or students? Great. Do we have any startups, any tech startups or any small businesses? Okay, super. What about venture firms? Any private capital in the room? Any money in the room?
Angels.
Come on, any money in the room.
Angels. Hey,
right.
give me one. Start the bidding.
Yeah. So I think it's important for us to have all of those people in the room together to solve some of these complex problems. It used to be in the past that we could solve them independently or solve them in silos, and I think that's hard for us to do now. And so we need conveners in order to do that. And I think, Mark does a lot of the things that I do, and I think it's unique to kind of go look at that. So I guess, Mark, let's talk a little bit about dual-use technology or the speed of technology and what's important there. Maybe you can touch a little bit on the dual-use aspect of things.
Yeah, so my exposure to the global landscape really happened towards the latter half of my career. I was a weapon systems development guy. So whenever we would design something here, we had to think about automatically our allied partners. And there were many of times doing multiple exercises where something as simple as a gas can refueling, here I am, a big gas refueling tanker, and an allied partner comes up, but I can't even put fuel into his vehicle because the connection wasn't there. We made do of it, as most soldiers do, but something as simple as that level of design needs to happen as early as possible. You need to know who your partners are. Right. And so when I was in the special operations community, I had access to the globe to find the best technologies out there. And it didn't just come from the United States. So I had to go and find these technologies abroad. But guess what I also had to do? I had to learn the business of bringing it back in. So technology isn't just, the singular factor of innovation. It's inherently the whole apparatus that we need to make sure it works. It's a system of systems. So I love your discussion earlier, about the multiple parties that are important to this. When we talk about policy, we talk about regulation, trade. Those are potential streams of opportunity or obstacles, depending upon what's going on. And they need to endure no matter what's going on. And so you do have to have an understanding of, this global prosperity and peace. It trace lines back to, I'm just designing an app. Some don't think about that. And it's got a dual application as well, right? So when we think about buyers, the technology doesn't know what hands it's going to be in. Look at this microphone right now. This microphone itself could be in a secret compartmental facility doing the exact same thing, talking about national security at a classified level. This device could be dual use.
I never thought about that, but we could. Now we can start a business doing that. Huh?
That's it. Mike's that could go in both worlds.
Of course. So the silo, breaking down these silos, I think is important, and a lot of it comes down to everybody wants to do good and solve a problem and be part of the solution and stuff. A lot of times, though, it's languages that deter us from doing that. And I'm not talking, about linguistic languages. I'm talking about the languages of the private capital world, the languages of the startup, the languages of the university. All of those are different, and it's only solved when you put these people in the room together to try to solve these problem sets that are out there. And I think there's some cool trends that are going on right now that we can talk a little bit about, and maybe you're seeing something different or similar, I don't know. But I also publish a Substack called Lauai, After spending all those years in China, I offer my perspective on some of these technologies. I would encourage you to go out there and maybe subscribe to it. I'll
plug.
do,
Everybody
I'll
give
do
a
another
little
plug
clap for
there
that plug.
for you.
That was
But
good. Nice plug.
part of this is the trends that we see. So some of the trends now and the predictions that I have on the radar, cyborgs is one of them. This integration of technology into humans and how do they interact. It's not only the chips that maybe go inside the body, but it's also the chips outside the body and how do people interact with that technology. Very, very hard to do sometimes. The military is trying to solve some of these problems, but also the medical world is trying to solve these, and different industries are trying to do that. I don't know what you're seeing, but another thing that is quite interesting right now, software over the last 10 years, the SaaS programs and how many platforms that you signed up with, it's endless, and they probably don't solve enough problems today, and now you have this resurgence of hardware that's out there, whether it be chips or data centers or infrastructures or sensors or any of those things. And so now the challenge is for a lot of tech firms is how do you take that technology, that hardware, that software, and the services and operate that efficiently to go solve a problem. And it's hard to do. It's not an easy task to do. So I don't know what you're seeing or if you've got any examples, Mark, of where that works.
Show of hands, who uses AI? Right. A lot of people. Maybe 6 months ago, maybe one or two, but now it's everywhere. And so when you talk about patterns, you have to look at this level of disruption that could happen. I think that has to be a planning factor in everything you're doing and mitigate that risk. So is it a political shift? Is it these wars that are going on? Is it a supply chain? Is it a pandemic? I think even at the smallest level, a young CEO starting out has to think of the geopolitical landscape. I can tell you that wasn't even a factor when I first arrived here 4 years ago. Everybody's like steady state. Now, whoa, COVID, so what? But wait a minute, there's this endurance of this disruption. And how does that affect my small startup? And I think you're starting to see organizations take on this entrepreneurial or intrapreneurial activity. It's probably the thought I would tell you and how they can remain adaptive. Universities right now are worried. Organizations are worried. Everybody is worried with this brand new cool technology that everybody's touching and interacting with. So when you're talking about this, it's a little bit of the unknown that you have to plan now for.
So the tech is one thing. If you look at that, then look at the process. So this can be related back into the government too. If you take a look back in history on the corporate side, I spent a lot of time in the corporate world. 20 years ago, we were trying to solve the problems that the government is trying to solve now in terms of process. And everybody's done this, right? You buy stuff on Amazon and you buy stuff on the cloud, and anybody can set up a website and do that. That happened 15, 20 years ago. All of that stuff happened. It completely transformed how corporations do business, how they hire, and the type of people that they have. The government's just going through this right now, which is quite interesting to watch. And I spend a lot of time, as do you, Mark, around a lot of the branches of the service. I believe that the Army is leaning in pretty heavily to this right now, and they're also interacting with a lot of international organizations to actually smooth or better that process, because there's a lot of firms, especially in Europe, that are far ahead of the process that the U.S. government is. And we can take advantage of some of those things. So I don't know if you have any comments on the process or what that looks like, because you come from the acquisition world. We do it a little bit different.
Process is a framework. It's a framework that we have to lean on as a basis to start, no matter what that is. And I'm excited. I got really excited when there's this new venture or ecosystem endeavor called Diana. Which was initiated, meaning we're going to put a large amount of dollars towards this new innovative activity. I got excited about that. But that quickly faded when I forget her name or what organization it was, but it was 2 South bys ago where she was bragging about $800 million is going to be put towards this new innovative activity. And I talked to her offline. I waited and she came. I said, ma'am, that's great. When we talk about national security and defense and all of this, the things that would matter to drive the innovation, at what innovation level or what readiness level are you planning achieving through the use of those funds? It's one thing to get the money. It's one thing to talk about it, but how are we going to implement that in order to be able to define, have we made it? The key parameters or, the KPIs of it. And she says, I don't know. That made me nervous. Again, when we talk about, let's slide down, when I hear, and I'm guilty of this myself, when I say the Army has problems, I used to say it a lot when I was in the Army, right? The Army is not a self-thinking organization. So when I hear Europe, who is that? And the professor's here. I wish he was here. I didn't mean to call him out, but I know he was very kind in saying, I don't want to name names. I think we should name names. I mean, that's part of being open and transparent, and how do we drive this innovation? So again, I am excited about what's going on in Europe. I'm not here talking negatively. I am very excited because they're going to reactivate an industrial base. I am excited about that. And there's going to be a lot of economic goodness that comes from that. When you start to develop things, you start turning on machines, you start cranking things out. I think that is a great thing to make sure that we all level up, right? When we talk about the new possibilities that are going to come from Europe, and how can the United States, Texas, help and make that activity thrive? There's a big, huge German company that's here very quietly that they do laser 3D printing. Man, I didn't know you guys were here in our backyard. They're one of the mainstays across multiple industries. We need to talk more about that, right? We need to be more vocal about energizing a young university student back there who raised his hand. Yeah, I'm a university student, but I'm also an entrepreneur. Yes, he needs to hear about the success stories of that. And then we all collectively can do and help and participate. And so, it just can't be in Texas. It's got to be Florida, right? It's got to be multiple locations.
Yeah, there's multiple touch points across the U.S. The cool part about the U.S. is we have 50 states, and each one of those states are pretty good at doing certain things. And the trick is finding what those good things are in each of the states, and then connecting the dots with either other countries or other organizations that can accelerate it. So I think. We talk about process. We talk about that in the terms of the accelerator programs that you run and that we run. What does that mean for that process, and do you think that's beneficial? I can answer it on my side.
You go first.
I think that the everybody familiar with accelerator programs? NATO, Diane, any of those? Yes, no. So an accelerator program is for small businesses, startups, and technology firms that are looking to accelerate their business in a variety of different ways. And so the programs usually connect them to business opportunities, they connect them to funding, they connect them with people and experts that can help drive their business in a lot of ways. So we run at eMERGE several cohorts throughout the year. Some are big, some are small, some are uniquely positioned around certain technologies and stuff. And by having changes in process in the government at the speed that they need, we actually can plug in our accelerator program and funnel all of this technology their direction, because the government's not really good and fast at doing this, nor do we want them to do that. We need the private sector to actually help in this process. And so we leverage these accelerators by connecting the dots into technology. So we make a ton of outreach 12 months ahead of time to ask about technologies and themes that the government needs. Could be around agriculture, it could be around health tech, it could be around anything that's related to the strength of the nation that we have. And can we create programs and accelerator programs that would actually benefit these companies? And then how do you attract some of that technology that's there? So it benefits both sides by doing it, and we will continue to do some of these accelerators. And we think that it helps. I don't know what your point of view is, Mark, on the accelerators that you're doing. You're more international focused than we are. Maybe you can share a little bit.
Yeah,
about
so
some of the programs? Because you got Jetro, you got
yeah,
you
we've
know,
done
yeah.
Japanese. We've done a lot. We've done a lot with multiple countries. And what I will tell you is each one is different. We have to look and do a SWOT analysis. What is the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats for that individual company to do an accelerator? First off, coming from my background in the military, I don't want to take from another country and leave a void. That's a bad thing, because then myself or others are going to have to go in there and defend it. So what we really do is sharpen our pencils a little more and really find the opportunities for both where they're coming from and where they want to land and how can they do well as a business. Sometimes it's just going through an accelerator to learn a new cultural and mindset. I'll tell you, the folks coming from Japan, they were great at developing technologies. However, at the rate of the technology need, they've fallen behind. So the accelerator program for Japan is to come in and be reinvigorated on processes to then go back to Japan and make sure they're very successful. But by doing that, they've created a bridge. We've opened up the opportunity for additional capital, additional customers to really look at. And, we've categorized the need of any business as really customers, capital. They need some company support. They need to find a community where they need to know who their competition is. But it's in that last vertical that we really look at turning that competitive landscape into a collaborative one. Meaning your expansion opportunity is not just to compete, but it's to collaborate. Maybe you bring something else to the table that is a brand new partner for you. Stay where you're at, and maybe that's the opportunity for both to really flourish together. So we go through that through a military decision-making process. My background, right? It's very much operational effects. And we've done that with multiple countries. And part of this relationship, he didn't really talk about this. When I landed here in Austin, there was like a month overlap that we became really good friends, and then he left to Miami. I was like, man, why did you do that? But now he's in Miami. So we really look at these international companies to come in and find the best place to land for them. And it is through relationships. It's through the warmth of the connection, warmth of the opportunity to help them meet those gates.
Yeah. So I want to touch on all the pillars here because I think they're important. So we talked about the startups, we talked about some of the programs. I think universities play a key role in this, a huge role, and they're underutilized today, both for talent and for the research capabilities that they have. In fact, I don't know what the numbers are. Maybe you know, Mark, on the University of Texas system, on the DOW or government, contracts that they have. It's got to be a lot. I know in the state of Florida, if I look at all of the R1 universities across the state of Florida, they have collectively, well over a couple of $1 billion in contracts with the U.S. government, both on the military side and on other federal agencies. What they're not good at is commercialization of that technology, and how do you take the use and the research of what they've been doing and put it into practical use within the community or within some other technology. A lot of times people don't know that it's there, and a lot of times people at the universities don't know how to interact with the business side, which goes back to my original point of the languages and the barriers that you have. So I think it's super important for us to remain and continue to remain close to universities for the efforts that they do. And I'll give you a good example of what we're doing right now. At eMERGE, we have teaming agreements with universities, and those teaming agreements are through Army contracts, Army Research Lab, DEVCOM. So they have certain problem sets that they're looking and trying to address. We have the capability through the university consortium on their side to try to solve some of those problems with the technology. So we can bring the corporate side in, we can bring the university students, and we can bring the government together to solve one problem set. I think more of that needs to get done with these big ecosystems, and I'm sure they've been done here, but they need to be done at scale so that we can capture a lot of the patents that university have. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't know
I'll
how
tell
many
you,
patents UT has, but it's got to be an enormous amount. And then what percentage are actually being used in practical
that's
ways?
right.
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about Texas from this standpoint. When you're number one in almost everything, complacency sets in. It really does. And I haven't seen, or not that I'm here embedded in the university, I haven't seen publicly the university really activate and do something new and innovative. Really, it's that what you're talking about. It's, yes, they seek government funding, and there is government funding in all departments, but where does that funding really materialize into an output? And so this is not a problem that only Texas has, but it's through an opportunity to educate. I'll tell you, and I know I'm in the battlegrounds here at UT, but I will throw out A&M. Actually, I need security walking out of this place. Like, who's going to get my back? A&M actually is educating the professors on entrepreneurship. And I think that's a phenomenal thing, because the professors are right at the point of where that advancement technology is, this convergence of money, need, problem sets to really thrive at that commercialization opportunity. That's where it happens. MIT does it. I mean, you read any book from an MIT professor, chances are he says capital multiple times because he has a relationship or he's part of a VC fund. Texas needs to really get after that from my standpoint. But to your point about it, ingredients, universities are critical, 100%. I think we also have to remain competitive to Florida. As you heard him say all of these things, I was like, oh man, I don't like that. Where's the chancellor? Let me get him, let him watch this. Like, that's a reality. We need to be doing these things. We need to publicize that. It only helps us all, by the way. This is good competition.
There are consortiums that are out there that work with universities all across the nation, and so being a part of those consortiums, I think, help for not only tech transfer, but they also help with workforce development. And if we look at the talent that is needed out there in some of these critical technologies, in some ways it's non-existent or it's very, very low. Quantum is a great example of that. We just don't have enough people that have enough knowledge in some of these areas to be effective. And so we need to put programs together that can actually enhance that. And it may not be the traditional education way to do it. It may need change in some of the system to do it. And the only way you're going to do it is through the technology, I believe, and through forward-looking people that can actually make some of these changes.
I know this is a EU discussion, so I think the universities should also collaborate with other universities in these type of programs itself, right? Because I said technology doesn't know where it comes from. So, if we're talking about tying in our allied partners, in the development activity, it's knowledge and it's transparency. I mean, look, who was on a Zoom call this week? Google Meet. Yeah, right. Who does these type of meetings? Like, there's a lot of show of hands. Like, what's wrong with let's bring in. So I think partnerships, even at the university level, working on these national security defense problems, only helps potential investors see the opportunity at a global scale, should they need to support or want to.
Yeah, so here's an idea. All universities in the nation and across the world have patents. They have a bunch of technology that they've developed. There's no one marketplace out there that shows all of these technologies. Wouldn't it be cool if you had a marketplace for all of the technologies that were present at universities? And people could access that on a real-time basis and match it. We have the technology to do this through AI and through software and through matching and through marketplace. It's just the desire to actually go out there and do that. So I think universities play a key role. Let's switch over to private capital, because I think there was one person in the room that had money. The rest.
Where was his hands? Where'd he go?
I don't know where they went. But listen, private capital is so important to where we're going, and we need it. That's why the U.S. government has leaned into it, especially on the DOW side, to accelerate a lot of these technologies. That's why you see the resurgence of Palantir, of Anduril, of these neoprimes and things like that. That's what's bringing it to the forefront. These companies, yes, they have government revenue streams. Yes, they have government money that probably went in, but the majority of their funding is through venture capital, and it's through private capital avenue. And it's super important to have them in the room and focus that money in the right critical areas in order for us to have meaningful things, because the private sector is going to move faster than any of those other entities that are out there, and we need to be closer to that. That's why you see programs today in the DOW, in the federal side, that are getting closer to venture capital firms. So, DevCom, the Army, SOCOM, even some of the COCOMs have programs where they vet a certain number of venture capital firms, and they work with those venture capital firms to point them to technologies that they are looking to use or wanting to use, so that they can either match that funding that the government has, or they can accelerate it and go all private with some of that. So it's super important to talk about this, because you need private capital in the room, and if you don't have at a convening level private capital in the room, you've got something wrong. They're not attracted to something. You either don't have enough startups, you don't have enough value, you don't have enough reason for them to be a part of the discussion. In my point of view, like here today, we should have a couple of tables of VCs, or they should be up here on the stage and they should be talking about where they're investing, what technology they see. They see frontline stuff, and they do vetting of all of these firms that are out there. They know what works, they know what doesn't work, they know where the money's flowing, and it's super important to have them be a part of the discussion.
I think you're seeing that play out here in the United States, and I'm really hoping that I've seen some semblance of EU venture capitalists have come through Q Branch, and they're asking, what patterns are you seeing? We've had universities come through, Romanian defense, and so it was great to see venture be a part of that discussion, especially when you see the European defense industry come alive. I think that in itself is going to make sure that no matter what political party is usually coming in and out, to make sure that that's an enduring opportunity. The capital markets will make sure they get their return. And that only helps the effort at large. So you're absolutely right. If you're not thinking of that in a positive light as a risk mitigation factor to have the private capital come in, it's a missed opportunity. You're seeing it play out with the Army, the co-investment opportunity. There was a question back here about space programs, and under different priorities that was shut off. They shut off the lights. Well, what if SpaceX wasn't the one to deliver that product, but one to invest in that activity? Possibly that would still be a thing. It would still endure. So I think we all need to look at private markets as an enabling function for most anything that we do.
Yeah. Okay. Somebody was showing a sign in the back, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see that far.
2 minutes.
So I don't know what it says. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to let's open it up for some questions here. Hopefully this was beneficial. We'll start over here on the right side. Move this way.
As Europe advances its digital sovereignty agenda, what recommendation would you give to the US tech companies who would like to maintain their access to European public sector markets?
So if I understand the question, it's your access to government entities and programs and the data? Yeah.
I think everybody wants as many customers as they can get, but there's a time frame from which to start those conversations, especially with a startup or a scale-up company. If they're a Fortune 500 company, they're all in, right? They're probably listed in an IPO, and that means that the shareholders are going to drive that. And so if you look at the patterns of a startup to get to that, usually that happens with a large inject of capital. And that happens maybe around Series B. So those companies that just received Series B or a significant round of in the hundreds of millions, they automatically are going to start energizing this global landscape. So I would tell you those are the patterns of when they think globally. Now, I've seen over the last year or so, true defense companies, as they start out, it's already a contested market here in the U.S. You're competing with almost Lockheeds and Raytheons or the Andurils. So I've seen small startups go international to really begin that kind of conversation, which is a great thing. So I think it's the familiarization and knowing the right spots, because there's tax triggers, there's policy, and they need a Sherpa like you to be able to navigate that process.
Yeah, I think regulation can deter companies from going one direction or the other for sure, and it can slow it down. But if it's the right technology and it's the right thing and it solves a problem, I think there's a way to make it work in some way. And we've proven that with some current technologies that are out there today. So I wouldn't let that deter you if the technology is right. All right.
Hi, good to see you, Tyler.
Hi.
I didn't get a chance to say hi. You both were talking about, as far as with the universities, co-working together and sharing information in that marketplace. So back to the entire topic of both of you, security. Patents are very hard to just disclose, hence why it's a whole step-by-step process. How were you planning on having a strategy for the students that are admitted to those programs to not disclose that right and left? Since you are talking about security, how many students at MIT want to hack into systems and then disclose it kind of deal?
Look, I was in the most highly secured environment known to man, and being yelled at by an analyst, why are these damn university professors publishing everything? They're giving our secrets away. Okay, but it's not a business yet. So there's a balance that needs to occur, and it needs to be at every individual state, not a collective, because we've also heard Elon Musk say, a patent's just a lottery ticket for a lawsuit. And that's a reality too. So I think it's, one, you need to know of that opportunity and make a calculated decision point in order to be able to say, look, we should start familiarizing ourselves with that process. But we do need to be transparent, or we need to design and bring people in and have some level of trust. And there are other mechanisms that you can bring forward to have that kind of activity.
Yeah, I think partnerships matter, and university partnerships, they have to be strong. You have to have great leadership in some of these areas in order to trust one another. The tech is out there. It's not being used in some cases, so you could argue that it doesn't matter. But tapping into that in some form or fashion, I think, is essential, and we have to. I don't know what the numbers are, but I think if we did the numbers, it would be a tiny percentage that actually gets out and used. If we can increase that by even 10% or 20% in an effective way, holy crap. I mean, imagine some of the problems that we could solve in that. So
the stealth program. I don't know if you read.
I'm a doer, right? And I know we've got regulation and things that we have to get around, but I can assure you that I didn't get into some of the positions that I have by waiting for the regulation to change and waiting for the systems to change. You actually have to change these systems, and that's the only way it's going to work.
Is that the hook? Thank you very much. Oh, we got one more question. One more. Okay, we can talk about. Thank you very much,
All right,
everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.